Welcome everyone to this edition of the Copado DevOps Exchange webinar. This is the third episode in a webinar series where we are promoting the listings published by our partners, our community members, and Copado Labs. And today we are talking to Centro about integrating Slack to elevate your DevOps flow. So we're super excited about the conversation we're going to have today. But before we get started, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is attending the event today. We would not be able to do what we're doing and being innovative with Copado if it weren't for all of the community members, partners, customers who make up our Copado community. We really appreciate your energy and your inspiration, and just want to say a big thank you for being here and for being a part of the Copado community. So we have great speakers today. First, let me introduce myself. I am Katie Browning. I'm the Manager of Community Engagement here at Copado, and I'll walk you through a little bit about the Copado community before we get started today. Then we have Alan Jimenez, who is our Senior Director of Product Management at Copado, and we are joined by the CEO and co-founder of Centro, Ryan Hitchler. And they will be having a great conversation. Let's look at what you can expect on the agenda today. First, like I said, I'll give you a few community updates, and then Alan will take over and share a little bit about what is the Copado DevOps Exchange and have a fireside chat with Ryan about Centro. And then we actually have a live demo around the Centro solution, and we'll wrap up with some Q&A. So to get started, if you're not already a member of the Copado community, I obviously highly encourage you to join, especially because that is actually where the Copado DevOps Exchange lives. So if you're not already a member, take a minute to scan this QR code and use that referral code CentroWeb, and that's going to get you signed up to be a member of the Copado community. Then you're going to have access to over 70,000 other DevOps professionals in our network who are having discussions, posting on the DevOps Exchange, getting certified, etc. Lots of great benefits if you join the community, so definitely take a moment to do that if you're not already a member. And the last update I have regarding the Copado community is a very exciting one. We have a brand new certification. It just came out a few days ago, and this is our Copado Extension Builder certification. This makes our 6th certification that you can get within the Copado Academy. And this is a way, it's going to teach you how to take Copado's capabilities and really extend them to the next level, extend the reach and the functionality of Copado and enable integration with other tools. So if you're tuning into this DevOps Exchange webinar today, I have a feeling this is a certification that you would be very interested in. So I've actually been able to get you a certification code if you want to take a screenshot of this. If you enter that into the Copado Academy, you'll be able to get this certification for free. So I definitely encourage you to take some time, take this trail, and get that Copado certification on your resume. And with that, I am excited to pass it over to Alan and get us started on the Copado DevOps Exchange conversation.
Katie, thank you very much for the introduction. Also very happy to be hosting the 3rd episode of the Partner Spotlight sessions for the Copado DevOps Exchange. Now, before we get into introducing Centro and their value proposition on Slack, I would like to get the community up to date in terms of what the Copado DevOps Exchange is. So the Copado DevOps Exchange essentially is the first DevOps marketplace for enterprise clouds. It's essentially our version of Salesforce App Exchange, but targeted to our user community, which is comprised of more than 70,000 DevOps enthusiasts around the world. We all know that Copado is highly recognized as the gold standard for Salesforce DevOps and testing, and we are humbled to see how successful our customers have become on transforming their ways of working when delivering value to the business. However, we also recognize that there will always be a DevOps team out there that has a specific challenge that requires some additional customizations. This is why, over the last couple of years, we have invested in evolving our solution into an extensible platform to empower those teams to build innovations that address those specific customer needs. And the DevOps Exchange will be the place to find those innovations and those solutions basically available for everyone to use. So the DevOps Exchange is actually evolving quite rapidly. And we have published more than 50 ready-to-install solutions offered by our Copado Labs team, our technology partners, and some members of our community. In this marketplace, you will find different kinds of solutions that range from data templates, which are the fuel for the Copado Data Deployer product. And we have data templates, for example, for Viva, for Encino, and for CPQ that can be basically deployed into your Copado org. Secondly, we have integrations that make use of the quality integration framework. For example, testing tools that can be integrated into the deployment pipeline so we can kick off some functional tests in the context of that delivery pipeline. Third, we also have the very famous functions, which are both supported for Copado Classic and Copado second generation. Functions are going to be very popular entry point for integrations to be built in the future, and we're very excited about that, and also make use of the entire cloud infrastructure from Copado to bring those very valuable functionalities to the customers. Fourth, as you know, we also have our Copado robotic testing product, and we also have a solution type called the test script. And what this allows us to do is that we can offer pre-built test suites, or what we call test accelerators, that support any cloud, any device, or any application. And last but not least, we also have the enterprise application type of solution, which is a full-blown solution that can allow customers to commit, promote, and deploy other clouds beyond Salesforce Service and Salesforce Sales Cloud. For example, Marketing Cloud, which we are working in collaboration with Accenture, or Commerce Cloud. Now, in the topic of today's conversation, we're going to talk about Slack. You're most likely heard about Slack, and if you haven't, it's just another alternative to Microsoft Teams or Google Chat. What we see is that developers and engineering teams really like to work on Slack, but this is not only for developers or engineering teams. Actually, large enterprises rely on Slack for cross-company collaboration, and most of the business interactions will happen in there. That said, wouldn't it be great to combine the collaboration power of Slack with Copado's proven Salesforce DevOps workflow? This is the purpose of today's webinar, but first, I would like to introduce my partner, Ryan from Centro. I have a quick chat about how Slack can help engineering teams break the barriers for productivity and efficiency. So, Ryan, are you up there?
Yeah, hey, Alan.
Ryan, happy to see you here. This is a good milestone for us as we have been working on getting you guys onboarded into the Copado DevOps Exchange. And I'm very excited to show to the community the Centro, the solution that integrates Slack and Copado. But before we do that, Ryan, maybe let's take a couple of steps back and have a quick conversation about why Slack is important and why engineering teams love Slack. Maybe take us through what you have seen in the market and why this is important.
Yeah, and first of all, thanks for having me, Alan. It's great to be here and talk about a subject I love talking about. So I'll start with a story. I was running the engineering team at a company called Conga, a popular ISV in the ecosystem you may have heard of. And I was running engineering there from 2016 to 2020. And we were all in on Slack. And my dev teams, lived and breathed inside of Slack. I think a lot of engineering teams specifically just love the flexibility and the responsiveness and the tool set that is available to them within inside of Slack. And I witnessed it firsthand. My teams loved it. When another chat app was proposed to take over a competitor of Slack, the engineering teams revolted. And I see this commonly across the ecosystem, especially any software development teams. They just cannot seem to work without Slack. And I've seen it as so far as leaders will pay for it on their own credit card and expense it if the IT department doesn't want to go all in on Slack across the company. So they love it. They revolt against it if it's not there. And they talk about everything. They talk about the design of a product or a project they're working on. They are talking about the deployment efforts. They're talking about incidents. They're talking about QA and things they're finding, and all of that rich data is in Slack. And I thought, well, what if we can connect that to where they are actually doing their work as a DevOps team inside of Copado? And how do you have those two things syncing naturally together, not only to have visibility, but also to have actions at the team's fingertips? So, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but engineering teams just love Slack for its responsiveness and its ease of collaboration.
Yeah, I guess there should be a reason why Salesforce bought it for billions of dollars, right? So,
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, we also love Slack, right? We use it here at Copado, and as you said, it doesn't start and stop only on engineering. We also use it for sales. We use it for marketing. So that's where the action happens, I would say. So it's about meeting the users where they are, but at the same time, integrate the tools that they love, which in this case, Copado for releasing and deploying, and Slack for collaboration, right? However, have you seen any obstacles on marrying these two worlds between Copado and Slack, or take us through what you went through?
Yeah, so typically what happens is there's a build versus buy decision, and you may want to take your team off their track of what they do as their core function. What product they are working on directly versus building add-on apps for Slack to things like Copado. And most engineering leaders will scoff at the idea of having that tooling team work on something like that rather than the core product. So usually there's a decision there. It's like, why would we spend time on something we could build, but we don't have the time to iterate through the cycle of building a miniature product just to have a nice tooling to have those two things sync. So there are some tools out there. You have to go code them. And so that's a big obstacle. And most people will just say, it's easier to buy it. So let's just buy something that we know works. A team is maintaining it. I mean, just like anything else in the software world we live in, it's one of those decisions. So it's an obstacle. You have to go through and understand how the Slack API works and what are best practices when dealing with new messages that come in, or how do I add that button in that and have it work consistently. So there's definitely some challenges. It's not like it's unachievable. We've seen people build their own, but then all of a sudden a customer will come across a problem. They're like, this is a nightmare. I cannot keep detasking my team to go work on the internal tooling. So that's probably the biggest obstacle to integrating.
Yeah, and look, I guess what I've seen in Slack is that they have really become a communication platform, not only a chatting tool, right? And we took a similar approach on Copado that we allow this platform to be extensible in a way, so you can connect with other external applications, and that certainly will lower the barrier of entry for integrating these tools, right? So can you tell us what do you see in terms of benefits of having these two platforms talking to each other?
Yeah, like I alluded to, there is some very rich, deep conversations that are happening about your core product inside of Slack, and there's decisions being made. They may be seen as micro decisions or minute things that the team has to act on, but it is all captured in Slack. The hard part is finding it and relating it back to, let's say, a user story inside of Copado. And so when someone goes and looks back and says, why did we make that decision again? And they can realize what was being discussed and the limitations at the time. So maybe they have a better experience next time around and learning from their past discussions and nuances. And oftentimes there are experts that are only living in Slack, and it's really hard to capture that and put it back into consumable, easy to find, easy to discover ways inside of platforms like Copado. So that's key, is discoverability. Secondly is, you may want to capture key parts of a conversation that happened inside of Slack, but then you're kind of going back between Salesforce and Slack to have that. So we have developed some tools to allow you to see and have full visibility to the Slack conversation from Copado. And lastly, there's some actions that we can surface so that you do things like update the records, the Copado records inside of Slack, or maybe add related records to a Copado record quickly and easily, or even actions like open a new pull request. So all of those things that you can do inside of Copado, we can surface inside of Slack and keep the teams productive where they choose to work and where they prefer to work.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, right? You're essentially you're removing friction from the delivery process, essentially. And we know that with Copado, we automate a lot of things and we also remove a lot of barriers, but now we are meeting people where they are talking, right? This is great. Then through continuous delivery can actually happen. And you mentioned the pull request, right? My favorite feature, opening a pull request directly.
Yep. And like I said, if you want to live inside of Copado, no problem. We can surface that inside of Copado page records, just like Chatter would live inside of Salesforce. So think of it that way.
Yeah, without stealing your thunder, right? I think you're going to show that in the demonstration, and probably that's going to illustrate all of these conversations in there.
Absolutely.
But just to close on the conversation, right? Are there any best practices that you would recommend on communication and specifically on Slack for customers?
Yep. So we see a couple ways that teams choose to behave, and one is just remove the chaos of random Slack channels discussing a project. I'll give you another example from my time at Conga. I was working on a customer account, and because people didn't realize other channels were created in Slack discussing this project with this customer, I was in 13 different Slack channels for this one customer, all having varying degrees of discussion around the same project. And it was incredibly frustrating and definitely not a best practice I'd recommend. So one of two ways I see things tying nicely together is creating a Slack channel and inviting the appropriate team members to that channel when it's needed, or automatically when, say, a user story is created, add the core team to the channel and have it linked to that user story inside of Slack. So that way, when you're finished up with your discussion, you can archive it and it's still linked back to the core discussion, just like you would expect in Chatter. So that's one way, is create a new channel and have the team in there and keep that one central channel, the channel you talk about that particular record. The other is you may have a project channel where you want to have multiple user stories being discussed, but they're showing up as threads. So that's the other thing you can do, is link the threaded conversation to a user story that's related to a broader epic or project. So in any case, having that structure and keeping that conversation tightly wound reduces a lot of frustration for a lot of folks. And we see a lot of people go that route just because they want to have, they don't want their Slack to look out of control, and they want to have it tied back to Salesforce where it's naturally found and discovered. So those are a couple key tips I would recommend.
And I would assume that it's not only tips, right? Your product will help you to organize that for the user.
Absolutely.
So essentially, you are removing Slack channel anxiety from the picture, which is great. Happens everywhere. Oh, that's great. This is very exciting, Ryan. And look, I think without further ado, we can actually jump in and maybe go more into depth with your value prop and possibly a demonstration of the product. So can you take it forward?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I'll jump right into it. And first, I'm going to kind of describe what we're seeing in the chasm between what problem sets there are that we're seeing in the market today and the outcomes that you'll see when you implement Centro. So like I was saying before, we recognize there's some really deep conversations about Copado items happening every day inside of Slack. And the question is how do we surface those to the records in Salesforce and Copado appropriately so that others can learn from them, We can see a historical record of how things transpired, and even contribute to the conversation directly, going right into the next point, which is like, if there's any swivel chair between apps, we've noticed people are really fatigued by this, and it may sound like a minor thing, but the reality is people just won't do it. They won't copy and paste. They won't, between systems, they won't take the extra effort to keep two things synchronized. And so our job is to keep that super easy. So if you want to live inside of Copado, inside of Salesforce, no problem. If you want to see the Copado data inside of Slack and live in Slack all day, no problem. And like I was alluding to before, a big question is, should we build this or buy this? And we've hopefully set up a solution that is priced reasonably to make that decision go away. So your team's spending and focusing their time on building their products versus an integration, a tooling app between two systems. And what we've seen out of the market today is there's very few options that are out there to explore. So some of the free apps that are out there are very limited. You can do some things, but for example, you cannot embed a Copado Slack record inside of a Copado object or on a page layout. So what happens when you get past these problem sets? The teams gets to work where they want, like I talked about before. They're going to save a ton of time and be more efficient working where they please. And it can be totally tailored to your team and how they use Copado inside of Slack. So it's all declarative. I'll talk about that in a second. So this is a kind of obligatory customer snapshot. Not much to share here other than, we have some customers that trust us and love what we're doing. So I encourage you to check out our App Exchange and look at the reviews if you want to deep dive on that. And then finally, we have, like I was alluding to, declaratively make this possible. So we have elements that are UI elements that surface inside of Salesforce and Slack. So those things are like the embedded Slack widget. You'll see this here in the demo in a second. But also we have Salesforce flow elements that are really easy to work with. If you're familiar with Salesforce flow, you can get this set up in minutes. And then likewise on the Slack side, we have what we call a record block, and we'll be just demonstrating this in a second, surfacing Copado data and actions. And we have automation elements there as well. So think of things like creating custom forms for people to fill out, looking at list views inside of Slack, those sort of things, and automation on the Slack side using Slack Workflow Builder. We have steps there that work beautifully with the other side of the house, which is Salesforce Flow. Okay, so let's jump into the demo and check this out right now. Hello, today I'm going to show how Centro is connecting Copado in Salesforce to Slack and what benefits that brings to the development team and what outcomes they'll see as a result. So the first note is a lot of development teams and engineering teams live and breathe in Slack, and they also have their duties and tasks inside of Copado and how to connect those two so there's a seamless experience. There's a lot of value when the team has data, context, and actions tied to their Copado workflow within inside of Slack. The next thing is, once we have those connection points between a Slack conversation and a Salesforce record via Copado, let's say a user story, is then we can start to organize all the chaotic conversations that are happening in Slack into the system of record, which will be Copado. Last, they get to work where they want, and this is a really powerful concept. If you can embed Slack inside of Copado and Copado inside of Slack, it gives the team the flexibility to work where they are most effective. And this overall will save them time and be more efficient. So let's see how this works in practice. So we're working on a new user story. The theme of the day is ChatGPT, so let's get this working on a Windows 95 desktop in this user story. And we're just going to go ahead and hit save. Centro is built on native flow elements. So we leverage Salesforce Flow for automation and Slack Workflow Builder on the other side. And you'll see the two UIs come into play here in a second. So when I hit this save button, we're going to trigger a record triggered flow. And that will create me a new Slack channel. We're going to add the team to it and post that into Slack where the team can now work. So our record is created, our user story is created. We're working with the Skunks Work team. And we have seen in this linked conversation, which I'll come back to in a second, this conversation that's happening in Slack. This is a live interface between the Slack conversation and Salesforce, so teams can work right here within the Copado record. On the Slack side, you'll see here a new channel has been created. And here is what we call a record block. This is displaying Copado data, and we can display up to 10 fields and have related items here available to us at our fingertips so the team can work more effectively. So for example, you can notice not only do we have the detail about the user story itself, and it looks like we forgot some information. So let's go ahead and hit edit here. We're going to edit this record in line with inside of Slack. This is actually pulling the page layout inside of Salesforce, so no need to configure this twice. We'll just leverage whatever you've configured inside of Salesforce. So we'll go ahead and add this to, let's say, a theme. I'm sorry, a sprint. We're going to add the sprint. And when we hit save, this will instantly save the record in Salesforce. And we can optionally post this message to the thread. We're going to keep this clean, so we're going to dismiss this for now. And we can see the record blocks updated with the appropriate sprint. Now I want to draw your attention to these related lists. So this is showing user story tasks. Let's say we need to add a user story task here as a related item. And that will also save a new record to Copado, and we can optionally display that to the team in a thread. And you can see the record block is updated, and we can see our user story task here. So this is all the native Salesforce records, but what about some of the actions like you would be used to within your Copado workflow, like opening a pull request? So we can see we have a button here that we've customized. You can add custom buttons to whatever your workflow desires. In this case, this will open up a pull request. So we can work on that in line within the Slack application and have that stitched back to Copado workflow as our team uses it. Okay, moving on. If we need to update the status, we can now move this to in progress, for example, and that will change the stage inside of the user story. This time we're going to post the record detail to the thread, and the team can kind of keep seeing what's going on here as far as the Salesforce data is concerned. Optionally, if there is a file we need to upload here, so let's say that we've got our testing team testing and they want to share some screenshots. Here we've got the GPT-4 inside of Windows working, and we're going to upload this to the Salesforce record, all seamlessly here with inside of Slack. And then we will hop back to Salesforce to see what that looks like. So if we refresh, we can see that that has come in as a note and attachment, or a file in this case. And we can see that in our conversation as well. So here is the file if we need to preview it here with inside of Salesforce. So again, this is a live conversation, so I can say, hello, that looks good, and do @mentions. And include emojis, all the things you'd expect to do as table stakes with inside of this embedded window. And likewise, that's instantly updating here. So pretty nice back and forth. Now, let's go ahead and complete our user story. We're going to go ahead and change this to the status to completed. Oops, not canceled, completed. And when we save, that is going to trigger another flow to archive the channel. And you can see in Slack that it's instantly removed that channel from my sidebar, so it keeps it nice and clean. But if we refresh here on the Salesforce side, we will see that this channel is now archived, but we can still see that channel detail in case we need to refer back to it. So allowing people to discover how a task was determined, the way it was determined by the team, and all the conversations stitched to it. So that is it. You can see how powerful we can bring these two platforms together inside of Slack and have functionality at our fingertips, saving our teams valuable time and money. So thank you for that, and we will talk to you later. All right, so hopefully that was a good overview of the capability set we can provide for Copado users who leverage Slack as their primary communications. We're proud to be on the Copado DevOps Exchange, so you can find our tools there, and we're happy to give you a personalized demo as well. And what we provide is a template for Copado use cases that we see generally, but obviously those can be customized to your team's needs. So really flexible and but a great quick start if you want to play with this in your own system. So let us know, and I'm going to turn it back to you, Alan.
Ryan, thank you very much for that demonstration. It's always exciting to see it. I love Slack as well, and I also love Copado, so it's great to have these two hand in hand to deliver more productivity to the team. So thanks a lot for that demo. I think this is the time where we are going to open up for questions for all the attendees. So for those ones that still would like to post a question, you can use the question panel, right? But we already see some questions coming in, right? So Ryan, I'm going to need your help here to answer some of those. We have the first question here. So can we have multiple user stories code commits as one deployment?
Sorry, you said, can you have multiple user stories?
Code commits as one deployment? That's an interesting question.
I think I covered that question. Any record inside of Copado can be surfaced inside of Slack, and that can be one or many, right? So we've seen channels where multiple items have come in, including the related items, and so you can do all of that management inside of Slack. So I hope that answers the question, but I believe so, yes.
Yeah, thank you. The second question is this tool freely available or it involves some amount of cost?
Is it available?
Freely available. They are asking if it's free or it's or there's some cost.
It's a payback, yes. So we do a free trial. We'll do a couple weeks of a free trial, get you set up and going. We have a quick start template for Copado specifically, so we can get you onboarded with what you saw in the demo. But obviously, you want to customize that to your likings. That's part of our value prop. So we start at $25 a user, and reach out and we'll have a chat about it.
Yeah, and I think it's also important for the community to know that the integration package itself, it's free, but of course they have to have a central license available, correct?
Yep.
That makes sense. We have a third question, Ryan, here. This is a good one. How long does Centro take to implement in a project?
We've seen it in 30 minutes or less, depending on the complexity. What you saw in that demo, we can get definitely started in 30 minutes because of our quick start template. But as you go through and you want to iterate on it, all those tools are declarative, so it's pretty fast.
So you can also customize other types of records that Copado brings into the table and put them into the flow. Similar way that you would do it with Salesforce, right?
Yep, exactly.
Great, that's awesome. But I think 30 minutes is quite good. Leveraging the templates is going to be definitely a quick start. I have another question here. Are there any limitations or constraints to integrating Centro and Slack with Copado?
Not that we've seen, no. If you're on Slack and you're on Salesforce using Copado, we are integrating the two.
Okay, great. What about security, Ryan? We have a question here related to security, right? What security measures are in place to protect sensitive data when integrating Centro and Slack with Copado?
Yeah, good question. We are a very lightweight app between the two platforms. So we're SOC 2 compliant. We have HIPAA sensitive customers, and essentially what's going on is we treat each event happening in Salesforce or Slack as a one-time ephemeral event, and that passes through, maybe this is giving too much of the secret sauce away, but through an AWS Lambda. So that event lives in milliseconds and is processed. We don't store any of that data. And those two, we believe the two data controllers are Salesforce and Slack. So we are simply a data processor between them.
Okay, that's very clear. One question actually that's popping into my head, Ryan, this is from my side. Why is Salesforce not building this?
So they
will they build it?
And just like any ISV in this ecosystem understands, there's going to be some overlap, right? There's going to be some concept of something Salesforce does that comes out of the box, but as we have experience in this ecosystem for over 10 years, and especially at our time in Conga, people ask, well, won't Salesforce just build document generation? And they do in fact have document generation, but Conga has conceded to, has continued to thrive. And so for us at Centro, we know we'll go very deep and solve lots of interesting problems that Salesforce can't or won't do.
Okay, that makes sense. By the way, we talked about a lot about Slack, right? But I would have assumed that there are some people out there that use Microsoft Teams. So there's a question here, whether Centro works with Microsoft Teams.
It does not currently. We do not support Teams or anything else except for Slack at the moment. We are dedicated to those two ecosystems and platforms, but if you have Teams and this sounds like functionality you need, please reach out. We're happy to explore and see what people, where the market takes us, but right now we're Salesforce and Slack only.
Okay, that makes sense. And I wonder if there's another question left. Let me just take a look. Yeah, we have a last question, of course. That's important. Where can people get this integration? So that's a timely question, guys. Obviously, we have Centro listed in the Copado DevOps Exchange, so we have done a small favor for you guys and put this into a QR code, so you can actually open your phone and navigate directly to the listing where you can get this integration deployed directly into your Copado org within your implementation, right? Of course, you can go to the DevOps Exchange and navigate there and search for Centro, so you will also get there. And hopefully you can start getting Slack and Copado integrated in 30 minutes, as Ryan was mentioning, right? So I think that's about the questions that we got, Ryan. So I would like to close this conversation, but before we do that, Ryan, it's been a pleasure. I'm very excited to see this in place. I also love Slack. I do most of my work collaborating with teams, and bringing Copado and Slack together. It's definitely a good thing to have in our marketplace. And well, I appreciate all the work that you guys have put, and thanks a lot for showing the value proposition today to our community.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Appreciate it, man. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah.
So for the rest of the people out there, we have been working with partners like Ryan and other players in the ecosystem already for a while to get them, let's say, to publish their solutions into our Copado DevOps Exchange. But we know that not only partners are the ones that are going to bring this type of value to our entire customer base and to the user community at large. We recently have opened up the ability for our community members also to participate in this program. And we would like to invite you guys to publish your own innovations and make them visible to our more than 70,000 members of the community. So if you navigate to the Copado DevOps Exchange within the community website, you will see on the top of the listings a small banner where you can learn more about the publishing process and about the steps that need to be taken for you to get all those valuable innovations into the marketplace. And as you saw at the beginning of the presentation when Katie was presenting, we also made a step forward to getting you to learn about the extensibility capabilities of the platform with our extension builder certification. So you can not only get certified on how to build on Copado, but you can also use those skills and expertise to build whatever idea or innovation that you have, whatever challenge that you have faced in your specific Copado implementation. You can build a solution for that, and you can distribute it through our Copado DevOps Exchange. So we really invite you guys to participate. We already see some traction. We have half a dozen community listings already at the cusp of being published. And the process is not that complex, right? So we invite you guys to go to the page. You will have let's say, a bit of information about what the process is, but to visualize it for you, you will build it based on all that expertise that you have gathered in the extension builder certification. You will package it with standard Salesforce technology as an unlock package, and then you will submit the listing in the by using the form that we have in the let's say in the Learn More page of the Copado DevOps Exchange banner that I showed you earlier. As soon as you do that, what we will do is that we naturally need to do a quick review. We will contact you in case there are any questions with regards to the content of the listing, or perhaps so an outcome of the security review process that we have to conduct. But we don't expect any major things. So as soon as we review the listing and we say it's good to go, we will immediately publish it in the exchange. And just for you to get a bit of a view how long this would take, it can take a day, right? Depending on how the quality of the submission, of course. But as soon as that's published, that will be available, as I said before, to our entire community base. And not only that innovation is going to help you, but it's going to help our community at large, which we will be eternally grateful. So that's about it, guys. I really appreciate the time that you have taken from your busy mornings on this session. Thank you very much for Centro for participating, and thank you everyone for attending this session. I wish you everyone a very good day.